Did you know you can rewrite your story? It's true. I've done it 100 times. I'm Kath Telford. I am a mum to 2 grown men. I'm a spirituality life coach and intuitive, and I also teach radical forgiveness. In my life, I've experienced trauma, loss, and insurmountable grief at times. I've worked through an eating disorder, sexual assault, and physical and mental abuse. But I'm still standing, and I'm happier and stronger than ever. My mission with this podcast is to create a community, a safe space where you can feel seen, heard, and above all else, loved. At the end of each episode, I will ask you a question and offer you a call to action. I'll also tell you how you can get involved and share your stories. You'll be invited to ask me questions and make suggestions on what you want to hear. I will be having some incredible guests along the way, some amazing human beings that have overcome diversity in their life. They will share with you their stories and how they got to where they are now. We will cover everything from birth to death and the big dash in between, and all things spiritual and woo-woo, my favourite topic. This ride may get rough at times, so buckle up and let's go. Hello, my darling souls. I am back for yet another episode of You Can Rewrite Your Story. So today's episode was meant to be an interview with one of my dear friends, Stephanie, as I introduced last week. Unfortunately, life has happened and Steph was unable to make this week's recording. We did attempt to do a recording the other night, but it didn't go according to plan, and neither one of us were really happy with what was produced, and decided to put it back to another time when Steph's back on track. It's been a rough few months for her, and she wanted to be in a better headspace before getting on and sharing her story, which I completely understand, because it's just never easy sometimes to get on and talk about the stuff that has brought us to where we are in life. So I wanted to still come on and do an episode. Wasn't really sure what to talk about. So it's not going to be a long one today. There's truckloads for me to still unravel on here with everybody. And your responses and communication with me about previous episodes has left me feeling very overwhelmed with love and support. And it means the world to me to know that my story is touching people and helping people come to terms with their own stories of trauma and loss in their lives. So that is what my aim was for this whole podcast, was to be as real and as raw and as honest as I can be. Memory prevailing. There's probably a lot of gaps throughout my stories as far as, I said last week about having lots of happy times. I had lots of fun times. Happy's probably not the word. I don't actually really remember being particularly happy. I was brilliant at masking my challenges and lack of self-esteem. Brilliant at masking it. People were always commenting about how confident I was and how, you're so bubbly and you're so this and you're so that. And interestingly enough, I never felt like that. My insides didn't feel like that. It was all bullshit and bravado, and helped along with a happy dose of alcohol. I was always the life of the party. Sometimes that ended in tears, very unattractive.
ugly crying tears. And, you know, in hindsight, I realised that that was a lot of my buried stuff leaking out when I'd had too much alcohol, which was quite often, unfortunately. It became a crutch and it became my best friend for a long time. And I was never a daily drinker. I wasn't one of those people that had to drink every day, but when I drank, I didn't know how to turn the button off. I didn't know when to stop. I would drink to black out and pass out. You know, it was all fun while I was in it until I was no longer conscious. And then the next day would proceed with, you know, those feelings of guilt and shame and what did I say and how did I behave and who did I upset and, you know, all the wonderful things that come with having an alcohol problem. I didn't really start dabbling in other substances until probably 19 years of age. I had an odd toke on a joint over the years. The partner that I was with for 2 years was a chronic weed smoker and he loved drugs, whatever kind. He loved a drug. I never dabbled in anything apart from weed on occasion. Alcohol was definitely my drug of choice. I didn't like the out of control feeling of weed, which is bizarre to say because alcohol after too many can make you very out of control. But I somehow felt that I had more control with the drinking. And I had started to use it quite early on in that relationship to look like I was having fun. He came from a big family of drinkers and family gatherings were always full of lots of alcohol. And it just became the norm for me. So following that relationship and then my encounter in the country town, I came back to Melbourne. Everything sort of begins to blur for me as far as timeframes went because I quickly found a new group of friends who were into the drinking scene. I found several new groups of friends as I did. I always had several groups on the go because, you know, I would feel if I'd fucked up one night with one group, I could disappear for a few weeks into my other group until, you know, that embarrassment had passed or my perception of how people felt about me. You know, some people kind of enjoyed that party girl part of me, but then there was certain people around that used to find it very overwhelming and overbearing and you know, they weren't around for long, those types of people, because I tended to find the ones that like to party. So this new group of friends came into my life and I still had several other groups of friends that I could go and drink with. And I was working in a pharmacy that sort of finished in my, I suppose, my late teens. Before I turned 20, that had finished. I started working in nightclubs and that was just one massive big party scene. Boyfriends were coming and going at a classic speed. And I suppose I wouldn't even actually call most of them boyfriends. There was a lot of blokes. And, you know, very rarely were they strangers. That generally were guys that I knew within the groups that I hung out with or whatever. But I was numb. I was numbing myself to life because up to date it hadn't been too kind to me. So the party girl. And I quickly became the girl who loved and left you, because that was easier for me than to fall in love and get involved and get hurt again. So, you know, I've watched, it's funny, I've watched shows over the years where I've watched women who were that kind of mystery girl, they seem to have that aloofness about them where they can just come and go. And it sounds really stupid when I'm saying it, but I hope you sort of get a grasp of what I mean. But that sort of girl that seems to have that loneliness in her, that uses alcohol and drugs as a way to get through life, looks like she's having a fucking ball, looks really cool, seems to be a lot of fun, but inside she's very broken and very damaged. At least that's how she feels. That's not what people see. Some people do. Some people are actually able to hone in on that part of you. And I formed a lot of friendships that have lasted me a lifetime because of that type of person that was able to see that this persona that I was putting out to the world was not really who I was. And they were able to see the depth of me and the love in my heart. And they've stayed friends all these years, which I'm very grateful for. So next sort of period, as I said, the next few years was just a blur of working in pubs and nightclubs and drinking and partying. And, I joined the odd band and sang in a band. And, there were trips away, weekends away to the country. Yeah, just a whirlwind of having a life, normal. You look at any in their early 20s person and that's life. It's all about your friends. It's all about going out and writing yourself off. It's all about, and it was the 80s. When people say to me now how well I've aged, I'm like, well, I'm well preserved. There was a lot of pickling going on during the 80s, and probably for the majority of the 80s, I have a massive memory gap. I don't remember a lot of it. In between, there are some funny stories, which, might come back to me in time. I know that they're in there, but over the years through therapy and self-discovery and everything that I've done to try and heal those parts of me, I've also come to realize that the memory blocks through that period of time are due to the trauma. So the reason I can't remember a lot of the fun times is because I was so busy trying to shut down and forget the traumatic times that it's very hard for your brain to compartmentalize. But there were a lot of fun times, but always alcohol-driven fun times. I didn't know how to go to a party and not write myself off. I didn't know how to go to a nightclub and not end up completely legless by the end of the night. And I didn't know how to stop. I didn't know how to have 2 or 3 drinks and then go on to water and then be that person. I didn't know how to do that. So yeah, the 80s were pretty much a blur. I met a couple of men during that time who remained very close to my heart for years and years and years later. One guy who it was a whirlwind 24-hour. We met through the people I was living with. He'd moved in with me by the next day. He had a heroin addiction. I was going to rescue him. I was going to save his soul. And we had such an incredible, beautiful, deep connection. And once again, one of those things you see in movies where, he was drop dead gorgeous, very troubled soul. And to the outside, we appeared to just be this amazing couple. But, we we were both fighting our own demons. And there was a lot of cheating involved from his side more than anything, because when you are so far into a drug addiction, monogamy is not a priority. You kind of go where you need to go, where the drugs are. But for the first few months at least, he got clean. I'd helped him dry out. I had a lot of really supportive friends around me, and I was working at the time briefly as a nanny for a family, and the father was a doctor, and they were really incredibly generous in supporting him through his withdrawal and getting clean, and that relationship, sort of the romantic part of the relationship, came to an end when his parents and I were finally able to get him on a train to go interstate to a facility and get clean. And this was going to be a long-term facility. It wasn't like one of these quick fix places. He was going to be away for a long time. And we stayed in touch and we wrote letters, and anytime he came home to see his parents, we would always, catch up and spend the night together or the weekend together or however long he was here. And I maintained a relationship with his parents right up until 2010, when he eventually lost his battle with addiction. After years and years of back and forth trying his hardest to get clean. And so he was one very special person that came into my life. And there was another guy who I'd met in those partying days who was the same sort of personality. I seemed to be drawn to these very broken men through that time. And I know now that I was looking for acceptance, and somehow to them I kind of looked like I had my shit together. And I don't know how that came about, because I didn't feel like I had my shit together, but I had always been a carer. I'd always been a protector, always been somebody that I would put more effort into fighting for you than I would into caring for myself. And that is something that to this day, I still have that part of me. However, I've learned, or I'm learning, to care for myself first. But that was life. That was life for me during that time. It was, that relationship, PM, I'll call him PM, came into my life. It was volatile. It was alcohol fueled. His drug of choice was alcohol. So we partied, and we partied hard. And we loved hard and we hated hard. Not that I could never be a hater. And I think why our friendship lasted as many years as it did was because I had that caring nature, and it didn't matter how many times he hurt me, or how many times he cheated, or how many times he broke off with me, and he would come crawling back the minute so we would break up and I would move on and find somebody else. And the minute he would know that I'd found somebody else, he'd be back at the door, pleading with me to come back to him. And that went on and off for years. So these two men were a big part of my life, and probably two of my greater loves. If I was going to say that I had some greater loves in my life, these two guys were definitely it. So MC and PM, who have both now gone to God, both lost the battle with their addictions by the time they were 50. And I was present at both of their funerals at their request. So that sort of showed me how important I was to them over the years, that people reached out to me to let me know when they'd passed and that they had asked for me to be found and contacted. At that point, I'd probably lost touch with both of them for a few years. I'd, moved on, got married, had kids, life changed. But there was always that underlying care and love for each other. Yeah. So that was the 80s. And then in late 1980s was when I travelled overseas with a girlfriend. I'd never been overseas before, and it was very exciting. And I had been through, so I'd been at a 21st one night, and it was gate crashed, and several of us were assaulted and ended up with a number of injuries, and it all went to court and we all got payouts. And it was from that payout that I was able to then go overseas. Just another little traumatic event in my life. Just to by the by, that's how I got to travel overseas. I got beaten up at a 21st. Thanks. And I was 23, 24 myself by this stage. And it was 1988, I think it would have been. Went overseas with this girlfriend. We went to Bali. We were out one night, and across the room I spotted this man, and I grabbed my girlfriend and pulled her close to me so she could see through the crowd like I could. And I said, that is the man I am going to marry. And I did. He was the man I married. And from that moment when we met that night to, a few years later, was probably the biggest love story of my life at that point. Yeah, it was funny how I just knew. I knew when I saw him, that's the man I'm going to marry. It's clear as day. Crazy. We met. He was living overseas. He was in the army at the time. He was from New Zealand, so he was in the New Zealand army, but he was stationed in Singapore. So logistically, we were nowhere near each other to be able to start this romance. And it was pretty much, lust at first sight. I wouldn't say love at first sight. That grew very quickly, though, long distance. But we just clicked and we just connected, and it was a whirlwind, and it was romantic, and it was thrilling, and it was, travel and all the things that I was looking for. And he was gorgeous, and he loved me. That was even more gorgeous. But that is a whole other story. That's not something I want to go into today, but I wanted to get to that introduction of that relationship, because life took a lot of crazy turns from that first meeting. And yeah, it was interesting. So that's pretty much the 80s for me. As far as landmark relationships went, and there are stories within those relationships that contributed to who I am and who I became. And they were very meaningful relationships to me, like very prevalent relationships in nurturing and developing who I was. I don't know if nurturing's the right word, because there was a lot of, once again, a lot of abusive stuff going on, whether it was, it was fueled by the drugs and the alcohol. There's no two ways about it. But there was also a lot of love there. And yeah, so many stories in there that I'm not going to go into today because I just really wanted to do a little episode today just to check in and, keep the ball rolling, so to speak. But there are some things the last few weeks that have come out in my life from those stories, from those relationships, that have had a huge impact on me. And there is an episode that I will do very soon that will talk you through what has just recently come to light in my life. And it was massive. It was massive. So as always, the last few weeks in between me doing these episodes, there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes and stuff that is coming up for me, which I only now see as a blessing. There are so many things that I stored so deep inside of me that drove me to continue to numb myself with alcohol and food over the years. Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot to unpack. There's a lot of suitcases to unpack. Let's be honest. Fucking hell. Yeah, a lot. So I'm not going to go into anything too deep today. I just wanted to really just jump on and check in and explain why my gorgeous Steph couldn't make this week's appointment for the episode, whatever. And yeah, just to keep the wheels spinning and to let you know that there's a whole lot more to come. I am working to get some more guests on the podcast that have interesting stories. And I really am determined to build a community on here and to start getting some real interaction and some real traction with you guys, my audience. And, I want to hear your stories. I want to be able to get you on my podcast and you tell me your amazing stories. So this is a shout out to anybody who's listening that wants to get on here and tell me all about themselves, and share the stories from their pasts and their traumas and stuff like that, because what it does is it helps others. We don't realize how important our stories are until we start to tell them, because we will spend our lives carrying around suitcases full of shit that we never open, and it manifests in our bodies as disease. It manifests in our emotions by us being incapable of having, inverted commas, normal relationships, because we've got these little things that we've packed away that have made us who we are. And there are so many of us out there in the same boat. There are so many people out there who have spent their life living with shame and guilt. Me, right up there. Like my whole life, I believed that everything happened to me because there was something wrong with me. So my belief system was that it wasn't happening to me. It was because I deserved it. And on some level, with what I've learned over the years through my radical forgiveness, through delving more into why we're here, why the fuck are we here? But delving more into human spirit and understanding that to some degree we do create our own reality. And that's hard for some people to get their get their brains around. And that's perfectly fine, because there are people out there that think this is all bullshit, woo-woo, and that's perfectly fine. You're not my listeners because I have learned that is what I believe is more likely than not a reality. So at some level, what we believe about ourselves is projecting out onto the world, and the world reflects it back to us. So if we believe we're a piece of shit and we're not worthy of love, what the heck are we going to create for ourselves? We're going to create relationships in our life that don't serve us, because then we can affirm to ourselves that we are pieces of shit and we don't deserve love. It's a basic. If you believe the world is full of shit and hateful, yucky, horrible things, what are you going to see? That is all you're going to see, because that is the belief that you're carrying around. That is the belief that you're projecting out into the world. And the world will always reflect back to you what you believe. That is how it works. That is how I believe it works. You believe whatever you want to believe. That is how I believe it works. And this has been the best part of me doing this podcast, is reaffirming to myself that this is how it works. I was talking to a friend yesterday. Now I'm going to get on a roll when I was all ready to wind up, but I'll get on a roll now. I was talking to a friend yesterday and I was talking about looking for signs, looking for the signs in the universe, looking out for signs. Oh, that must be a sign. And if I can verbalize this clearly enough for you to understand, I struggled a bit when she said what she said to me, because, I need things said to me in simple terms. But what she was saying to me was that paradigm has closed. The universe isn't showing us what we have to see. We're showing us what we have to see. We are it. We are the universe. We are all connected. What we believe and what we are looking for is all coming from inside us. So when we are looking for the proverbial sign, in sense, that is what we're projecting out there. So of course we're going to see the sign. We'll say to the universe, send me a sign of a blue butterfly if I'm meant to, kiss that boy on Friday night, whatever. Send me a sign of a blue butterfly. You mightn't be necessarily meant to kiss that boy on Friday night, but some part of you wants to kiss that boy on Friday night. So of course you're going to see a blue butterfly. We put our own signs out there. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense, because it made sense to me. When she clarified for me and simplified it for me, it made a lot of sense. If we're asking the question, there is a part of us that wants that. Experience, wants that experience. So, for example, show me a bright yellow car if I'm meant to leave my relationship. Well, part of you wants to leave that relationship. So you're going to see a bright yellow car. So we're the ones that put the signs out there. Does that make sense? Because it makes a shitload of sense to me. We create our own reality. So when we believe something is for us or not for us, if we believe the world is full of assholes, we're going to keep meeting more assholes, because that's what we believe. If we believe the world is full of loving, beautiful, spiritually connected, amazing human beings, that is who we're going to meet, because that's the vibe we're giving out. But if here we go, I'm going to get even deeper on this one. If our core belief is that we are unworthy, unlovable, unsuccessful, undeserving, but we look at other people and go, oh, but I want to hang out with those people because they look so cool and they look so spiritual and they look so blah, blah, blah. We can hang out with those people, but because our core belief is still that we are undeserving, unlovable, whatever, life isn't going to really move on for us. But when we look to be around people, I'm going to use the term high vibrational people, which is the aim. We want to be high vibrational beings because the more high vibrational we are, the more amazing things we attract into our life, because what we put out, we get back. So we could hang out with the cool spiritual people. We could still feel like pieces of shit. Eventually, those cool spiritual people are going to move away from us, or the ones that say that they're cool spiritual people, and there's a lot of these in the world, who really aren't. They're really not happy beings. They're going to end up being our circle of friends. And they will once again reaffirm to us that we're undeserving, unlovable, unsuccessful, because we will attract those ones into our lives. So we want to be this and we want to hang out with that, but we'll attract this back into our life. It makes sense to me. Don't know if it's making sense to you guys. We create our own reality. That is all I can say. Whatever the vibration is that we're holding is what we will attract to us. And there are plenty of things on YouTube videos where you will see demonstrations of how vibration works. You put a low vibration against a high vibration object, that low vibration will have no effect on that high vibration object. You put a high vibrational object next to another high vibrational object and a Tibetan bowl or something, and you gong on that, it will create a sound in the other high vibrational bowl. Rambling now. Yes, I know. All of a sudden I'm vibing, going, yes, this is what I want to talk about. We will attract into our life what we believe about ourselves. And then we can reconfirm to ourselves that we only deserve that. That is the point that I'm trying to make. So what I am trying to attract into my life and what I want to attract into my life is a community of people that love and support each other and are able to open their hearts and open their souls and open their mouths and share their stories. That's what I want to create. I want to be able to be on stage and motivating the shit out of all of you. I want to be able to tell you my life story, show you that I've come through it, got out the other side, got my shit together. And once again, that doesn't mean that the healing stops, because we're learning something new every day and we're constantly healing. And the aim is to continue that healing, because as we heal, we're healing the planet around us, because we're all connected. We are all connected. And everything I've learned to date and everything that I encompass in my life has shown that back to me. I know I'm on the right path. I still question how I'm going to get from A to Z as far as where I want to be in my business, for want of another word. But on my part, but I know where I want to end up. And I want to end up on a stage, banging on a microphone, because that's what I love to do. Sharing my story with everybody and listening to your stories and hopefully guiding you to some sort of empowerment to know that you're okay, to know that you're not just okay, you're fucking amazing, you're fucking beautiful. I love you. I don't even know you, but I know I love you because we're all connected. We're all connected. And that's it. That's all I'm going to say today. I have got this event that's going to be running in Melbourne on the 9th of March that I'm hoping anybody that's in Melbourne or anyone that's slightly inclined to travel to Melbourne, as it is a long weekend down here, It will be a day of me facilitating some healing for you. It will be a day of me sharing my story, not a whole day of you hearing my story, because that could be just a bit too much in one day. But sharing my story, doing some activities, which sounds a bit light, but doing some processes during the day that will help you look into what has held you back in your life and what is stopping you from being the person that you want to be. And by the end of the day, you will be transformed. Now, I say that, and you can take it with a grain of salt. With these events, and I've been to several over the years, you go, and the best thing that you get out of it is that by the end of the day, you have got some answers. You walk out of there, you float out of there because you've shifted a shitload of crap that has been weighing you down for years and years and years and years. And these type of events are amazing. And transformation is the word that I will use, because you are transformed at the end of the day. So if you can make it to the event, I'd love to see you. I am going to share with you the radical forgiveness story, how I came across that, how it helped to change my life, how it helped to affirm to me that everything that happened for a reason. You know, I went off path. For a long time, I went off path. But something has always pulled me back in to alignment. And that has always been that. But there is a part of me that's always known there was something bigger, something more happening in this world. And that I was here for a reason. And we all find things in our life that bring us to that realization. Mine was reading The Miracle of Radical Forgiveness. Radical forgiveness. You know, the word forgiveness can be really daunting for people because we have this traditional belief of what forgiveness is. But being able to live with this concept, with this perception, has freed up so much of the space that was held full of shit. I'm going to say full of shit a lot, but it's true. That's all it is. It's just stored shit in our body. Radical forgiveness, for me, showed me how to look at the world differently. It made sense. It finally made sense to me. And it changed who I was. It changed how I viewed the world. It was just a book, one book. But that one book sparked something in me that helped me get to where I am today. An amazing book. Amazing book. I had somebody refer to it recently when she was recommending it to another friend. She said to this friend, I found God. This friend was like, what are you talking about? I really understand what that meant. And God, not in the concept of God that we have this religious concept, but the bigger and the better picture, the bigger picture, whatever that is, whatever name you want to put on it, spirit, the universe, you know, higher self, whatever name, whatever label you want to give it. This person felt like she had found God. And I understand that to the degree of I found me. And that's really fucking huge. So anyway, that's where I'm going to leave today. I'm not going to promise what I'm going to talk about on next week's episode, but as always, it'll be some baffling story or something enlightening. But as always, I love you all. I really do. And I don't just say that flippantly. Everybody that knows me when I say I love you, it means I love you. And I appreciate all of you, and I'm extremely grateful for those of you that are still following along on this little path with me. And we'll still be there at the end of wherever I go. There won't be an end. There is no end. I don't believe in an end. But yeah, so grateful to each and every one of you, as always. Please reach out, send me some messages, shoot me a DM. Tell me your story. I actually give a shit. I actually do. And I want to hear them. So until next week, next we meet. That was one word that just blended in together then. Until next week, look after yourselves. Remember how loved you are. Talk soon.
So thank you for listening to today's podcast. I am so, so grateful for each and every one of you. To get in touch with me regarding any of my episodes, you will find me on Instagram, Facebook and TikTok at Kath Telford Empowerment Coach. I love you.